Thank you all for being here, and welcome to our 36th webinar in this series. We've been doing them every Tuesday and Thursday since March, and having a great time. Taking and sharing some very good information. We've been the amount of information that we've been sharing, and you guys have been answering polls and sending notes, and it's been helping us understand maybe some new topics and seeing what's important to everybody. And today is one of those where we're doing something that has been asked for quite a few weeks, and it's a good thing. Those of you that are maybe don't do this form of motorsports, Tom is going to talk about some pretty cool little tips and tricks about ways that he does look at dirt oval data. But it's the same functionality. He's going to show you some different things that he looks at and ways he looks at it. It all is absolutely applicable if you're on a motocross bike or an off-road truck or a spec Miata. So it's going to be a good time, and it's always good to look at how other people approach data analysis independent of the form of motorsports. So looking forward to that. Again, this is the 36th one. We've got a good friend of ours that if you've come by our PRI booth, a big place where we meet a lot of you guys every year in Indianapolis. Tom is always one of the guys that's there and working with lots of different users. Always a joy to have him come and visit us there and work with us. Tom Harris has been around for quite a while in motorsports. I met him at the PRI show and started to chat with him, and we chat quite a bit with either emails or phone calls, and Tom started using AIM products a long time ago, right? In 1998. He's an old timer, right?
Absolutely.
He's a lifer, and him and his son, a little bit of a kinship on how we got into this, as well as I got into this because my son was racing karts, and I had a different vendor's product when we first started, and bought my first AIM device in 1998 as well, and started to use it, and then became a dealer and began to really work with helping and sharing and working with people. So pretty much the same backstory with Tom, which is another reason that we get along well, probably. So Tom, give us a minute or two about who is Tom Harris? What do you do? How do you use data in the dirt oval world that you hang out in?
Well, like I said, started back in 1998. Got my first dirt oval go-kart. I'd raced some pavement stuff as a kid, and found a logger in the magazine. So I ordered it up, put it on a dirt oval out in Tucson, Arizona, and it wouldn't work. So I called up the office and I got a hold of Mike McKnight, and it was a faulty speed sensor. That's what it was right off the bat. And he said, "Hold on a second." And they put one on a plane. He said, "If you'll just go to the airport at this terminal, your part will be there." And sure enough, this girl walked off an airplane with a speed sensor in her hand and handed it to me. And that was sort of my introduction to this world. And when we started winning with it, we were the only ones in Tucson that had a computer at the track and stuff like that. People looked at us like we had four eyes. And then we moved to Virginia. I got transferred there at DC. I worked in federal law enforcement. And that's about the time that Mike opened the East Coast office. So we had been friends and became even more dear friends, and raced a lot of go-kart stuff there. Then moved back to Oklahoma, where karting was not very big. And the micro sprints were big here. And of course, I'd gotten used to having data, so I put one on. We started winning, and of course, everybody else wanted one. And at that point, I'm probably the guy who puts them on most of them and supports most of them. And a lot of my micro sprint guys came out of go-karts, so they're used to data. And then they move up to midgets and full-size wing sprints and things like that, and have taken their need for data with them. So it's gone from the micros up into the midgets and to the full-size sprint cars. I get some full-bodied stuff on occasion. So that's where we're at.
Perfect. And a dealer since 2004, one of the originals. And his website's there on the panel in front of you, microntom.com, micron-tom.com. If you're looking to chat with Tom about anything after we get done here, his email address up in the upper left corner, give him a holler. And just tons of experience with this kind of stuff. And we're going to talk about a little bit of that today. So let's start off with, and Robbie put the link right in the chat box there. So perfect. The first thing we typically like to do is start off with a poll, and so I'm going to let me bring this one up, and it's one we typically do start off with, and what aimsports hardware do you own and use? Select all that apply. It's a multiple choice. There's also that you'll notice we only are given 10 places for these, and we have more products than that. So there's an other box down there, and it's kind of for smarty cams. But if you end up with something other than a smarty cam, go ahead and type it in, and then go into the chat box and other equals whatever it is that you're using, and that'll help us. One of the things Tom mentioned to me as we were talking before we got started was in the microsprint world, there's still a lot of Micron 3 auto gauges. So that's something, if you have something like that that's not on our list, go ahead and add that in there. So we'll let that kind of go just for a little bit, and I'm going to chat about, let's go to the next slide and get ready, and then I'll start the process of sharing back over to live data, because that's, we're gonna jump right in and basically spend our time in Race Studio. So there's Race Studio. I'm gonna go ahead and close that in that poll here in another 5 seconds or so. If you haven't voted, make sure you jump in there really quickly. And what we're going to do is we're going to jump in. Tom's got a couple of sessions that he sent us, and we're just calling them Tom 1 and Tom 2. There's a Dirt Oval Micron Tom 1 and Tom 2. We have this data available for you if you're a dirt racer or I'm in that poll right now. If you're a dirt racer and you don't have a data logger yet, and you're thinking about it and you want some sample data, Robbie will link the sample data in the chat box here in just a moment. We also have, Tom has also built a few user profiles and some math channels that we're going to look at a little bit today. Those are all available. Robbie has put the link to this data file and the second one, Tom 1 and Tom 2. And he'll link the other stuff as well. And when we get done, we get this stuff up on, this video gets up on YouTube. You can go to the description box and find those links as well if you don't get them from the chat box right now. So if it is something you're interested in, go ahead and go to the YouTube video in about an hour or so, and those links will be available to you again. Okay, perfect. So Tom, we've downloaded our data, right? We've just went out and we've made the run, and we've come in, we've downloaded our data. Let's walk our way through. The name of this is Dirt Oval Data Analysis Tips, right? So what you're going to kind of walk through is, hey, I've downloaded my data. Let's walk through a data sample session, a data analysis session of my Dirt Oval, and we'll do it here on one with Tom 2, and then we'll open up another one and we'll talk about a couple of other different things in that file. So what do you do when you first get to your data?
So where we start in oval racing is generally there's hot laps out there, and hot laps is where everybody wants to make sure that they get all their that everything's running right and that nothing basically falls off the car. So I encourage my customer to get a lot of heat in the car, just like it'd be race type heat, because we want our Lambda data and those things to be as accurate as possible, because we're just going to get a quick snapshot of those in 3 or 4 laps. So we start off, and I think this is heat race data, which is not very many laps either. But if you notice that we've gotten rid of the laps that are, say, the pace laps or a caution lap or things like that, and we distill it down to just pretty much race laps. And that helps us look at a few more things. So after we get it distilled down to that, the first thing I look at is I want to see my channel report, because what I want to start off as is, do we have our gear right for the track? We race on a lot of different size tracks, so we have different gearing at all these different tracks. We also have tracks that are slicker, that have more grip in them and things like that, and that also dictates what our gear is. So when you know your motor, if you've been on a dyno or you're familiar with that, you really know where peak torque is. And that's sort of important for oval racing because you want that torque, you want that grunt to be able to pull you up out of the corner on these things. And you basically have two dyno pulls down each straightaway. So we look at the bottom side of the gearing. Everybody that was used to having a tail tack, they'd look at the top RPM and trying to turn this fast or turn this RPM. And really what we found is coming off the bottom, you want to be at peak torque. So we look at these things, and these motors are right about 10,000 is where peak torque is. So we're maybe geared up just a little bit. We can sort of see that on the top end here, that we're turning it a little more than we wanted to. But
What
that's
some
the
people,
first
Tom, what some people might be asking is the minimum is 10,000 RPM, right? And the max is 16. What in the heck are you running in these things?
So this is a 600cc motorcycle motor that has been converted to methanol, and it's all tricked out and ready to go. They have some stock classes and things like that, but
what brand is this one? What
this is
Kawasaki?
This is a Yamaha. I think
Yamaha.
is what's in this one
Okay.
right here. So typically we have Yamaha, Suzuki, and some Kawasaki's.
Gotcha.
So these are little hand grenades that you pull the pin on the first time that you pull it out of here, and it's amazing. They're pulling around a 750 pound race car is what they're doing.
And I'm not sure it's fair to blame the engines. You're turning it at 16.6. I mean, the hand grenade part is not necessarily the engine's fault.
Yeah, he
Anyway,
may not he may not want his motor builder watching this one. Sure.
Okay.
So we look at that speed, not so much, and then we look at water temperature. We want to know, we can judge a little bit of the health of the motor by water temperature. Did we go out? Was it warm enough? So is it within its performance parameters? We want these things 160, 170 to go out, and then we turn on a overheating light. And most people, we set these things about 250. Some people are a little shy at 240, but we don't turn on an early warning light. And what I tell my customers is, we don't want your driver worrying about the temperature unless it's time to make a final decision. And I always told my driver, if that light comes on, you better be winning with 2 laps to go, or pull it in and save me some money. So we look at water temperature though for the health. Then we want to look at fuel pressure, and we want a consistency in our fuel pressure if it is an electronic fuel pump, which most of these are. And if it's within a couple of pounds, that's pretty healthy. Back when we had carburetors, these things really started off on carburetors when we were running 4, 5, 6 pounds. Now electronic fuel injection runs up here into the 60s. And then we have mechanical fuel injection, which we'll show you. And boy, we've got all kinds of fuel pressure there. But we use our data. Also, we don't want DNFs. So we want to look at this fuel pressure. We raced the Tulsa Shootout about 4 years ago, and had a brand new car, brand new tank, new paint job, all this kind of stuff. Went out, and you don't get very many races to get locked in at the Tulsa Shootout. So we won our heat race and our qualifier, and we were locked in, and we probably had less than 20 laps under roof at that time. And boy, things are good. We are set. And I start looking at the data, and it showed descending fuel pressure, down, 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 down. So I pulled out the fuel filter, and sure enough, I didn't clean out the tank well enough. We had a new paint job, things like that. And I found particulates in the fuel filter. And even though it was running like a scalded dog, it would have been a DNF. It would have, no, not at all. So
Yikes.
use this to predict and to keep your car running well, and because you have to finish that feature. So I encourage people to look at their data just quickly after each run to make that. And
It's the same in all forms of motorsports, right? We have that data analysis triangle thing: vehicle health, driver performance, vehicle performance, right? You're really looking for 3 things, and in your case, there's a couple of those here in your channel report, but the one you're talking about there is vehicle health, right? It's so important in order to finish races, and if you don't finish the race, you don't win the race, right? So perfect.
Exactly.
I love it, and it's across all forms of motorsports.
so then we have TPS, and for electronic, it's important to to know that you're seeing the full range of TPS, because the mapping is based on RPM versus throttle position. And if you have a bad throttle position sensor, something like that, and it's not showing a good range, then that could affect your performance and your map. And if you're dad, you want to make sure that your child or your driver is getting in the gas and things like that. So we take a quick look at that. Then we look at Lambda, and we're really looking at it as an average, because we know that we want that average for these methanol race cars here somewhere in the 80, 81, 82. And sure enough, we look at this one down in the 77, and this car I predict would be a little fat, a little rich on its tune, on its map. And that would be of a little bit of a concern to me. For methanol burning cars, you can cheat them fat on the bottom. They'll still perform very well on methanol, a little rich on the bottom under load, things like that. But rich on top will really flatten out your RPM. The ideal is to come off the corner at a 79 to 80 as far as a Lambda number, where it has a lot of fueling, a lot of grunt. It really wants to pull it up out of the corner. And then we want to lean it down towards the end of the straightaway to make RPM. And if we can come off at 10 and make it all the way up there, if we stay in the gas and we have a good fuel curve, whether it's a carburetor, whether it's electronic fuel injection, or whether it's mechanical fuel injection.
Right.
So that's what we take a look at. And that's real quick right after hot laps. You talk to your driver. Was he happy with throttle response, things like that? And if everything on here looks good, we got our gear right and our fueling right, then we just go off and we're working on the car to get it to go around in a circle. We're watching the track. We're trying to predict where the track's going to go. We might be timing the classes in front of us to see if later on if the track speeds up or slows down. But we're really watching the track and getting the car ready. So
another kind of interesting thing that's available in the oval track, it becomes even more important to some folks, is over here on the left edge. There's this distance figure. It's the only place in the AIM Race Studio 2 software that you can that it gives you the distance of actual rollout distance that the driver drove, and you can see by this driver for his 5 laps that he did, the tightest he was maybe down near the bottom of the track 980 feet and up to 1030. So there's about a 30-foot difference in the amount of rollout distance when he was moving around on the track. Just kind of an interesting thing, that especially on the shorter ovals, that's kind of a nice little tool to be able to look for consistency.
Some people also monitor oil pressure on their motors, sometimes oil temperature, but oil pressure on these things, a warning light doesn't do you much good. You can usually hear a motor going down before oil pressure will tell you it's going down, but having it and being able to watch it versus temperature and stuff can also tell you the health of your motor. We had a kid win the preliminary night at the Chili Bowl in his midget. And when he went out for the actual hot laps for the race, they knocked a hole in the tank, lost oil. So boy, they were trying to decide. They've got a $40,000, $50,000 midget motor, and they're trying to decide, did we hurt the motor? So they pull up the data. They show that it did indeed have a period of no oil pressure. So they pulled out this $40,000, $50,000 bullet, replace it, and when they got it back to the motor builder, they were very thankful because they had saved, and that paid for the system right there. So,
yeah,
oil pressure
and a bunch of systems.
yeah. Those midget motors are not cheap.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that. All right, so I'm going to switch over to our measures graph and start to talk about a little bit right here. For this also. So if you see across the bottom, you'll see all of your different, your laps. And what we're looking for is that we want to see some consistency in all of that. We know that we've got all of our good laps in there, and we don't really have our any bad laps or caution laps, though sometimes we want to go and look at one at a start that we may have gone. We can pull that back easily. But here we have, it always comes up the fastest lap. And here we have RPM, and it's not the prettiest RPM signal. It's pretty jagged on there. We have RPM and Lambda. We'll just pull up speed here and take a look. I'm going to go back to our map here to show it here. And right here, we're looking at GPS speed. And of course, you can put that on throttle position. You can put it on Lambda. You can put it on a lot of things. And I really like it for fuel pressure if we're having a fuel pressure issue, because I can look in the corner and see, do I have a pickup problem? Where am I running out at the end of the straightaway, which could be a pump or a regulator? But in the corner, a lot of times that'll indicate a pickup problem. So having that is very handy. So we see that our speed trace is up and down, and you'll get sort of these two humps and two straightaways, and that's what we have in oval racing. Up at the top, I usually divvy it up by straightaway, turn 1, turn 2, backstretch, turn 3, and turn 4. And depending where you have your GPS start finish line, sometimes you can get those as solid. This one's busted up, and the front straight's really on 2, but it still gives us an indication. So you'll see this driver, we go to where his slowest point is right in the apex of the turn. So this car is gaining speed right at the apex. This is really good. This is a good driver. This is a good car, a good setup. And what my what my people are looking at data is how soon they're getting back into the throttle. So we're going to bring up throttle position here. So you can see that this is a pretty hooked up track. My driver is not having to pedal the car, is what we call it, to work to get the speed back on it. When he got back in it here, and you can see this is a rather sharp throttle input right here, man, the car took off and went. Now, it didn't, look at all this unequal RPM here. So this is quite the load in the corner. These things are sort of buried up, and that load sort of grips and release. You've got bouncing. So you can see that RPM, it'll pull hard and get pulled back down. And then once we get to the straightaway, and you can see where the screen starts, our RPM really starts to going up. But the good thing is our speed is relatively a pretty good angle right here. So that's pretty healthy. And this throttle position sensor, it shows a little more throttle here at the end. That's probably a variation in the sensor, because I bet you this guy has it buried.
Interesting that the throttle position off the throttle not nearly as long in turn 1 and 2, and then over in turn 3 the track maybe is this is dirt oval, right? So that there might be more banking, less banking down in 3 and 4, or it might be a little bit slippier, or he's trying a little bit of a lower line or something. Kind of interesting how much difference in throttle position.
Well, take a look at the map on the left, and you notice that these are not two equal corners. You see that? See how that it's pinched down at one end and a little wider at the other.
Bit of an egg shape.
It is, and you find that a lot, that they are not the same at both ends. And you're trying to get a car to work in 1 and 2, and then you have 3 and 4. So that is part of the joy of our type of racing.
There you go.
So what I do at this point, and this is usually, if I have a trouble at the track with my fueling, I may do this, but a lot of this is on through the week is when we look at this. And with my customers, they call up on Sunday nights and Monday nights, and we look at data together until they sort of get the hang of this. So what we do is we usually start, and we get the zoom up here, and we come, and we want to start from when we get into the throttle till when we get out of the throttle, because a lot of my guys are used to going to a dyno, and this is what they see. It's much like a drag race, 2 drag races down. And when we're looking, so with this, I can pretty much take off my speed. I know that. And my throttle, he's gassed it up. I know that I've rolled into the throttle and out, so I don't even need throttle position up here. So when I get Lambda up here, I am looking for basically something rich at the bottom and then leaning out at the top. And you can
There you go.
see
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
this map is rich is down and lean is up. So we've got a good profile, but man, the whole thing, we would really like this to be at 78 to 80, and then we'd like it to end up here about 82, 83. So we like our profile. Now, on the track with electronic, you can start pulling fuel pressure out of it electronically. And when we looked at fuel pressure, we've got very solid fuel pressure. So we could have pulled it out. It's not a variation in fuel pressure causing anything. So that can come out of our equation, but we could pull some fuel pressure out of it to get there. Or we can remap it through the ECU. And what we see here is it trends. You can see how it's still pretty fat on top, and we would like to have taken some fuel out of it. And you can see up here at the very top RPM that it is sort of flattened out up here. And I feel like that if we would have had a little less fuel in this car, we could have probably took some gear off of it, and it would have still run up here to where we wanted it. But
Perfect.
luckily, we've got their GPS speed, and you can see how it sort of flattened it out at the top there, and that tends to tell us that we've got a little too much gear on it.
One of the questions that's been asked is the noise in the RPM grip, and from what Tom has said, absolutely, as it's coming off the corner, you see that jagged stuff at the bottom. That is the engine is rotating the tires, right? It's a solid locked rear end with probably huge tire circumference, stagger in it, and as the car is leaning over and starting to come back, it is spinning the tires, and you're seeing the RPM, and then up at the top, it's starting to hook up. So. Absolutely. And Matt Romanowski asks, can we see the segment map? We are going to look at the segment map with a split report here in just a moment. So we will see that too, Matt.
So
okay.
That's exactly right. So you can see we're in what we call turn 2, and you can see that is grip and release. And even though that may not be spinning the tires, what it's doing is lugging the car down and pulling it up and pulling it down. And you can see how it also on the Lambda, when it grips hard and pulls, you see it leans the car out, and it goes lean, rich, and this is not the map. This is from the load on the car. The load comes on and off and on and off.
A big part of your grip on these things. Obviously, there's aero with the wings and the tires, but the tires are the pressure is as low as you can get it in order to get that kind of grip, and the tire then is compressing and releasing as well as spinning. So yeah, great, cool look.
That's correct. So this is a pretty good look at electronic fuel injection. That's a little fat, but we went through how our race goes, and that's basically what we're looking at afterwards if we haven't had any kind of problem.
Yeah, you talk about we always talk about here at AIM and with our training and the webinars, we have that that data analysis triangle where we and the driver performance, vehicle performance, and driver performance. That health thing you've talked about quite a bit here. You've looked a little bit of ways to speed up the car as far as vehicle performance. You're looking at adjusting the the air fuel ratios, the Lambda sensors, and get the thing to pull stronger and run better at the top end. And the other thing that we always talk about is what happened, where did it happen, why did it happen, right? What about some driver performance things here? Is there if we were to take, let me grab just a little bit. If we were to take away maybe some of the driver, the engine stuff, and if we were to bring in maybe let's say lateral G's, right? We're going to see what we can do to help the driver and try to figure out a little bit about performance things that they could do. If I just bring up lateral G's and this and then start to look at it, this we did race oval track as a family for a couple of years. It was pavement, but it was but oval track. And some of the stuff I would always look for, and I'm anxious to hear what you have to say. You start to look at, you load the car in. Of course, it's a little bit different and a little harder to do correctly in the dirt. You go turn into the corner, and you see your G's build just like somebody that does road racing in bikes or cars, and you start to see that load, and then you want it to build up, and you want to go around the corner, and then you want it to come down laterally as you head down the straightaway. And I just see there's a something here that there's a couple things that I see that are just a little bit odd, right? And this is his best lap. And if we go to the next lap, you can see that that is fairly true. A little bit of a dip right here, but in the lateral G's, and it's peaking, down here where you were talking about, and then the speed still comes down as he's rotating the car. But over here in the tighter corner that you talked about a little bit ago, it's boy, there's a big release here in the middle, and I see that in that lap, and then in this lap, and then maybe this lap. And what I'd like to do is maybe I bring up a couple of laps, and if we change the per lap color, and let's turn one of them red, just so we can see the differences between the two. And then you see this big old red release. That's the one I seen first, right? And then I see there's a little bit of it in blue. But gosh, the driver's driving it in, and look at the difference up here in the. Interesting. The driver is trying to maybe search around a little bit for some grip. It is dirt oval, and boy, this red one, when he was up here, he hit a big bump or something, right? Because it all of a sudden from here it releases lateral G's, and then he got a little bit more grip back, and then of course he was accelerating on his way out and opening his hands and opening of the wheel. Let's look at the third lap.
He may have slammed the cushion. They get right up on the wall or on a big cushion, and boy, you are leaning on it hard.
Interesting. And to turn this from a vehicle performance and a vehicle health, and we're looking at a way of looking at the driver improvement side, right? And it's just interesting here that the driver it's a heat race. In 3 laps in a row, he moved himself around on this end, especially a little bit down here, but especially up here, he went high in the middle and down low. And you can see that the red one, the exit on that red one, even though he hit that cushion and probably got right up on it, up high. But boy, did it have some speed coming off, right? So little things like that. And then the other end, since we're talking about it, and then I'll turn it over to you. But on the orange one down here, on that lap, he drove it down low on entry. On this at this spot right here. Put the cursor in here just so we find the right spot. Right here, the orange one, you can see that he drove it down low, which will almost always in an oval track give you good speed in because you're not rotating it yet. But the trouble is at some point he had to rotate that car, and down here he went right past his other lines and then slid up the hill a little bit, and it started to hurt his speed coming off. And then even here he was still having to rotate it, probably out in the fluff, and then it ended up with a lack of performance right up in this area. You can see the G's, even he had to hold it for a little bit longer to get it to rotate. Just my quick 2 cents on the driver performance side of it, right? Helping that driver understand what he's doing. What do you think about that third element of this, Tom?
I tell you, this is very valuable. I tell you what this really points out. This is a very high caliber driver. So this is a heat race, and he may be leading by this time. But what he's doing is he's searching around the track to see where it is for the feature race. He's wanting to see, does he have his car set up to run the top, the middle, the bottom? What's he going to have to do? Because if a lot of tracks, they get to be 1 lane, and they might be 1 lane on the bottom, 1 lane on the top, where most of the cars are running. But to go forward, you're going to have pass cars. So you may have to run the middle, you may have to do both. So he is already searching around on this track for what he's going to need to set up the car for the feature.
Perfect. And my off-road racing is most of my dirt stuff's off-road, but some in the paved or dirt oval. These guys, and this guy, like you said, is just a highly skilled, very successful driver. They even are moving up not just to test it, but to prepare it, right? They're starting to work that in.
Yeah, that's right. So
Amazing.
You're working the car up, or you're working it down. I tell you, on that Amazing. Orange lap, look at that low entry and high exit. And if you're familiar at all with sprint cars, one of the most exciting moves in there is called a slide job. And what you do is you dive in under your competition, because a lot of them loop out at the top and then turn down and diamond off the corner. But if you've got to get past somebody, what you do is you keep your foot in it and you dive in below them and you get under them and you slide up in front of them. And in some points, you're taking away their momentum. And if they've got good grip, they're going to turn down below you and drive back around you on the bottom. And you'll see this with drivers 5, 10 times at both end times, and they're sliding back until somebody finally keeps that momentum off the corner and they can't get back under them. But that's one of the exciting elements of dirt driving is the slide job.
And the data is that's that third piece that I just wanted to make sure we covered a little bit of, that whole driver performance piece. I didn't want this just to be a vehicle health and
absolutely no. This is very important.
Perfect. I love it.
And this is what we talk about with a lot of dads during developmental stuff. We're also looking at throttle position. We want a young person, a young driver, to learn how to pedal the car on dirt, because if you don't give them the best car, they've got to have good throttle control to get back in the gas as soon as possible.
I'm going to start up another poll just for a minute, but there's a question that just popped up, and maybe you can, I'll read it to you. I know you're probably not read in the Q&A, but do driver in Dirt Oval, in road racing, we have long straightaways, and you come off the corner, and then you can look at your mirrors, you can look at your data. Do drivers watch lap times to get instant feedback as to what works for their lap times? In other words, changing that line and doing some of these different things. In Dirt Oval, are they watching getting a little bit of the predictive lap timing, or looking at lap times and at the middle of the straightaway and making calls?
Well, it's very, very busy in these things on these small tracks. So they're not, I have a handful of drivers that are looking at stuff, but the predictive lap timing shows promise that when you're out front, it's really hard to gauge as the track changes if you're speeding up or slowing down when you change the line. And we're really hoping for predictive lap timing that is compared to the previous lap and not just the best lap. That would really be what we want. So if you move
track
up,
changes so quickly.
Yeah, if you move up, did you improve your lap time, or did you have a problem? And that's the kind of predictive lap timing we really want for dirt oval stuff, like that. For that, but I've got guys that are watching Lambda, and there are certain controls on the dash. I mean, I've got some that can do it all.
Perfect. I'm going to launch a poll here, and of course, at the I'm going to launch a poll here as we get ready and to go to that other data file. Right? Do you want me to change that other data file, Tom?
Please.
The poll that I just set is: when analyzing your data, what functions do you use the most? To all of you that are watching, if your function is not shown, please hit the type it into the chat box. It's multiple choice, so pick. Just don't pick every one of them, but pick the ones you use the most. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close down Tom 2, and we're going to open up Tom 1 in the background here, and I'll just stop that right there. I'll let Tom take over in just a second and put that where he wants it. The poll, we'll just leave that go for just another 10 or 15 seconds. So if you haven't done that yet, do that. Is GSUM a useful tool in oval data analysis and the friction circle? What do you think about the GSUM tool, Tom?
I have recently started to use the GSUM with my driver development because dads need to know where to improve the handling on their car, whether it's lateral or longitudinal grip. We're looking for both. We want these things to have the grip through the corner and then to go forward. And they're using the GSUM to see when they make a handling difference in the car, or they send their driver to a different part of the track. Are they addressing it appropriately? And the GSUM is helping them give the total of keeping the car going forward and keeping the grip in the turns. When I mentioned where they drive on the track, at dirt oval stuff, you'll see dads, crew chief, people like that on the fence, and they have, just like a baseball game, they have signals: go up, go down. Because when you're out front, you really can't see if this track's starting to come in at the other end, and you will see all kinds of of subtle motions. And then you have some of the really super good guys who have maybe a super good guy on the fence, and now you have the competitors watching your dad or your crew chief as to know where to go.
It's
So,
always more complex than we think, right?
oh,
Uh,
you never know everything that's going on there.
and it kind of ties into a question that Andy asked: are the drivers typically talking to the pits live? I don't think radios are allowed in your form of racing, typically, right?
Absolutely not. It's a big no-no. There's a lot of them that don't even allow data because they think it's traction control. They're so afraid of that kind of stuff.
I ended the poll, and let's share the results so everybody can see. We were talking about when analyzing your data, what functions do you use? When you get into Race Studio, Tom showed us a couple so far. He's going to show us a couple more with this data file. But measures graph, of course, it's kind of home base in Race Studio. 89% are looking at that. Channels report which is something Tom already showed us as well. 70%. That's the second highest one. And then it looks like the time compare bar, it's tied in with the measures graph, but that is a very, very important part. And I know Tom uses that quite a bit as well. We haven't talked about it yet today, and then the split report, something that Tom, I believe, Tom, we're going to head to that here in just a moment. So pretty much in line with some of the stuff that Tom was talking about as well today. I appreciate the polls. I'm gonna stop sharing those results, and these polls, while they're fun to do and kind of a kick to work around a little bit, it also really helps us as we're coming up with new content for future webinars. So I appreciate all of you participating in those. The next thing I'd like to do, Tom, is you should have control. Let's jump into this data file, and let's talk about the difference. What is the difference? I think it's the same driver, but what's the difference in the car? Why? What's different? What are we looking for?
Okay, so on this data right here, I want to pull up. We've got our engine. We're going to pull up some fuel pressure, throttle position, and Lambda, and take off the speed here. So now, when you look at this fuel pressure, it's variable here. So this fuel pressure is in purple at the top, and you'll notice that we have a low of 18 and a high of 126. This is a mechanical fuel injection here, and that's just like the big sprint cars have been running for years and years, and it's engine driven, so it's really representative of RPM also. So I'm going to auto scale my Lambda over here. We've got throttle position on this, and
AutoScale, something we've talked a lot about in our previous webinars. If you've seen them real quickly, just do something there. You go about in the middle of that scale bar and double click, and it best fits the data trace you're looking at in that one there. So Tom uses that a lot, and I happen to like that one as well.
So what this mechanical fuel injection is, what I tell people that are learning about it, it's the leaky hose. So what you're doing, and as you build this pressure, you want to keep some of it go into the injectors, and then you want to leak some of it back to the tank. And they typically have a low speed that affects it when you get off throttle. It lets a lot of fuel go, so it's not too fat when you get back into the throttle. You have a stumble valve, which we're going to talk about on takeoff, because you don't want it too rich, and we'll talk about that. And then you have a main jet, and on the main jet, you can move this whole Lambda line up and down by putting more or less fuel back to the tank and less to the injectors. And then you have a high speed. And remember, we talked about we'd like to take fuel out of it to lean it down at the end of the straightaway to make more RPM. They like to do that. So we also, at one point, the high speed opens and it directs a little less fuel to the injection. So here we have our throttle position. We're going to go back to our dyno pool and replicate.
Same technique you used before.
Yeah. Yep. We're going to zoom in here, and this is just like you would see at Tim Engler's dyno or your local dyno, any of those, except you get it at the track. And I will tell you this, it's been my experience on these cars that you can take them to the dyno and dyno them all day and go straight to the track, and you're probably going to be a little lean, because none of the engine dynos, even the big wheel, the heavy drum dynos, can quite replicate the load and things that we have at the racetrack. And almost everybody has to add a little more fuel to their mapping or to their plumbing, as we do on this with their pills, under real race conditions.
Yeah, airflow and load, side load
Ah,
and forward load, all of
yeah.
that is variable. The dynos are great, but it's this data really helps get the thing figured out.
So we see on this one that it comes off a little bit of nothing with throttle position and man. And here it just, of course, you're spinning this thing 15, 16,000 RPM. It's really putting the pump out there. And so under part throttle, we would expect it to be leaner here for that. Let's just see what our speed looks like here. So at this track, we're having to gas it back up. So he's really into the throttle even before the apex. Well, this was a 40 lap race. This is a very long race, and this car is set up good. So he can gas it up, and even though we're losing speed, you can we'll bring up our engine RPM here, and you can see where we still see those humps in it, and that is, boy, it's pulling it down and pushing it up and pulling it down in this corner. This is heavy load, but boy, it starts to look good. Look how good this car is coming off. Even from the apex, we're not seeing it load and unload like we are right here. This car is very well balanced, and it's going to come on out and pull all the way up here with that. So this is what you want to see in your driver. You want to be able to get on the gas as early as possible and see this car going forward and making speed as soon as it can. A lot of cars that are handling poorly, and we're out of the corner and we're not really gaining any speed until we get up here on the straightaway. And this is where most of the races are won coming off the corner,
making the straightaway longer because it's pulling so strong. There's been an evolution in mini sprints. Andy's asked a question here: is EFI legal? And it's just that the cars, the era of the engines, the early mini sprints, and I'm talking a little bit unintelligibly, but carbureted very much early, then mechanical fuel injection, maybe with a little bit of electronics, and now lately is a full EFI, with a brain box. Is that correct, Tom?
Well, close. So all these cars in the Yamahas, the Yamaha carburetor is most popular, and that was the last one in 2002, I believe. So then it started to go to electronic fuel injection. It's what we saw to come on. After that, you have Don Gould, you have some of those people that start to convert these stock electronic fuel injections into methanol. And then you had Tim Engler bring in the mechanical fuel injection, and a lot of people were more familiar. A lot of these dads are big sprint car drivers, and they were not as familiar with electronics as they were with mechanical, and they both have advantages, disadvantages. It depends on you. If you like to work on mapping the performance electronics stuff, you can do your own stuff. The rest of them, pretty much, they will have to redo your map based on your Micron data. Like I said, Don Gould, he will import Micron data and make the map changes off of your race data. It's
perfect.
He loves to have that stuff.
It's funny that it's dirt oval, and that you got two drag races right on each side, like you've mentioned. And while performance is and absolute horsepower is important, what you just showed here is how you get it connected, and then coming off the corner is even more important to good lap time, right? It's not just that you've got X horsepower; it's how you use what you got, and tuning is why you spent so much time here today looking at Lambda and throttle positions, is because that is lap time. It's a critical part.
Boy, it is. And I'm telling you, a lot of these tracks are not high horsepower tracks. You're in and out of the throttle, and it's a lot about drivability. Especially now you can use your data. Is the motor responding to your driver's foot the way they want? We have strokers, we have 2 mils, we have all these different motors, and boy, they have different headers, and they have power bands, and they'll throw you back. They really pull harder, and all that is a balance on what your driver likes to drive these tracks.
Great.
Well, looking at
To finish that topic up as you're getting ready to go, Bruce just put a question up there that actually I have been wondering is what about braking going in the corners? Are they just lifting off and when they rotate it, it slows it down, or do they physically use the brake pedal?
okay, they're
Different for different lengths of tracks, I suppose.
no,
But
they are many times turning the car with the brake,
oh, okay.
and a lot of my rookie drivers and dads and stuff, we have added brake pressure to our data on those, and we're trying to teach the drivers how to use both feet because braking is very, very important.
Okay, very cool.
So that's exactly right. So this is the mechanical data, and as we see, it's built up here, and well, you can see as compared to that electronic, look how straight that is. Now, what I see here is I would like to have my high speed pushed back to where it takes out a little more fuel on this one. At the top, you can see it flattens out a little bit here at the top, but this is really not too bad. But I'd like to see it a little leaner on top, and you would accomplish that with a high speed. Let's finish that up. Let's look at that. Can you pull up that start? I can't see the bottom of my track.
I'm sorry. There, let me do that for you.
At the very bottom, can you pull up that that restart?
Let me back out just a little
Unzoom,
bit.
yeah.
There you go. You should be able to handle her now. That's the lap of a restart.
Right. So this is a restart, and what these mechanical cars have is called a stumble valve, and what it does is it stays open and lets fuel go back to the tank so it's not too fat on takeoff. So that's what you see, this little spike here. So when you're working with mechanical fuel injection, and I want to take off my speed here. You can see here where he's rolling into the throttle from a little nothing. So it's pretty fat on here, but when we want to take off and gain RPM, and you can see how steep it goes up here, is the stumble valve is open, letting fuel go back, and then it closes. So you see it's opening to right here. And look how lean that is.
It's very lean.
And boy, look at that RPM. Just zoom up there, right there. So it's really going up there. And as we see fuel pressure going up, that fuel pressure is at 23 pounds right there. And as soon as that stumble valve slams shut and it quits diverting the fuel, boy, it jumps right back down here to where you want to be. And this is just beautiful Lambda, and you can see how this car takes off and continues to pull up there. So when you're looking at mechanical, you need pressure and RPM and your Lambda to see how to affect and how to adjust your data.
Amazing racers are always they're solution oriented people, right? These guys are noticing they're getting beat, leaving the line right on restarts, and they figure out pretty quickly it's because it's too rich, and boy, they build a process to lean it out so they accelerate better. It's been always fun to watch good racers go to work. It's good times.
Yeah. So. And as to the rest of it, it's the same stuff we talked about in the first test.
Yeah, perfect. The let me grab that back to that lap, and as we're kind of closing things out, you talked about on the previous one, your Lambda numbers were in the if we look at these are 82, 83, and they were 77 or something before, right?
That's right.
So this is much better number from where you were talking earlier.
This is exactly where we would want to be when we would open this up and we would take a look at our Lambda average there. That's where we want to see 82, 83. And as you can see it, when we looked at it on the measures graph, it verified all of that.
Just kind of a closing, as we kind of work towards a closing, we have the Lambda average on this column, and we've got our Lambda filtered average, and that's something we haven't talked about, but Tom has a math channel that he has created here that I'll just show it really quickly, just so people will know it's there. What he's done is there's another channel here called Lambda filtered, and he has taken his Lambda values, and he is only when the throttle position is greater than 90%, we show the Lambda. If not, it's a 0. So what that is gives us the ability to do is, and if I bring it up, Lambda filtered, you can see that the Lambda filtered is this bottom channel now. Wherever the driver is off the throttle, you can see the throttle is down here, the Lambda goes to 0. And only when he is above 90% do we actually record. We're just filtering it out, but we actually show it. Then when we go into the channel report, there's an option that a lot of, some people don't know. It's probably 2 or 3 years old in the channel reports. It's averaging the Lambda filtered data, averaging NZ, and the NZ is when not 0. It basically takes those 0 values and considers them nulls. And the trouble over here in the LCC Lambda one average, part of the time it's the Lambda is down here at 0.6 or 7, right, or whatever the number is when he's off throttle or goes really lean, and so you end up with an average that is maybe not your tune. It's better to do this Lambda filtered and then do the average not 0. So you are now tuning when the car is at wide open throttle and coming off the corner, and of course down towards the end of the straightaway. So I just wanted to make sure we're seeing these two columns, and they do kind of contradict themselves. So I wanted to make sure we chatted about it.
Because off throttle Lambda, it can be all over the place,
and will be.
People worry about that, but that's what it does. It's you want to lean them down to slow them down or that sort of thing. So this gets us right zeroed in there.
Yeah, you can see what it's doing when he's off throttle. So that's that math channel, and the math channels are available to you. Robbie has just linked it in the chat box. Tom actually was asked that question earlier about GSUM. GSUM is another of the 2 channels he has. He doesn't have a ton of math channels, but we've made them available. But that Lambda filtered is powerful, and GSUM and Tom probably will be working on maybe a few more in the future, that just ways to help him find that data quicker, find those things faster. Perfect. There's no questions in the Q&A box right now, Tom. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about this one as we kind of wrap up our webinar today?
No, I just, we talk about the elements of this, the what, the where, the why, when we have a problem. This is an invaluable tool when we have any kind of problem. So if you come in from your heat race or from your hot laps, these races run very quickly. So you do not have much time between your runs. And if you look at your data and you have a problem, you can really focus in, whether it's a battery voltage, whether it's a fuel, no matter what that problem is, data will get you ready for your next race in a timely manner.
And that vehicle performance, driver performance, vehicle health, that vehicle health part is an area that anybody, different forms of motorsports, doesn't matter. That is such a powerful part of data. A lot of people get data and they think, really what this is about is making me a better driver, right? And that's good, and that's a powerful tool, and it's certainly, you should be using it that way. But boy, there is so much more that the power of data when you look at things like this, make the car faster, make the car live longer. That's such a critical point. So
absolutely. And for the driver development for dads, the big thing is to get your kid in the gas early and often, and to get a car that's under them that they're confident in doing that. And boy, with throttle position, you can really see that.
Absolutely. I'm going to launch one more poll as we kind of jump back into the presentation materials. This is one that how often are you looking at your racing data? Multiple choice. So if you look at it after every session, and then you look at it at the end of the day, whatever it happens to be, give us an idea of how often are you using it. How often do you look at your data? It's a multiple choice, so you can take a look at both of those. I'm going to share back to the presentation while that is going, and then there we go. And then I also I'm going to tell a quick little story. Is that poll is being finished out. Local midget car racer was they'd built a brand new car. This ties in so well with what Tom talked about earlier with his own experience with his racing team. They're at a track that was about an hour south of me, and they were out there during the day, rented the track, big race coming up the weekend, and they were the car would run okay, brand new car, and the car would run okay, midget. And then it would fall on its face, and they had spent literally almost the entire day working the electronics, right? RPM boxes and thinking it was an electronic ignition issue. and because it was misfiring and popping, and so they finally called me, and I happened to be at a time when I could run down there. So this was several years ago. I run down to the track, and I get there. It's 3 or 4 in the afternoon. By the time they've been fighting it all day, they end up. I download the data. They had an Evo 4 on it, and they hadn't downloaded the data. I downloaded the data. The fuel pressure was absolutely falling off every time they were going down the straightaway, and they had worked it. And they had a brand new car. And they're trying to do some chassis stuff at the same time. They're trying to get the motor to be clean, and finally the driver, everybody's frustrated, so we get in there, we pop apart the filter. The filter is full of plastic bits and brass bits, and just the exact same thing that you talked about. We cleaned all up that really quickly, put it back in there. Happy happy ending that they but with a bit of a sad ending too. They were all frustrated, and they get ready, they go out, and the thing runs like crazy, right? That we have found the problem. And like on the second lap, the driver was going so much faster, and he thought, lost the car, spun up and hit the and took a corner off of it. So their testing day was done. They just had to replace a few parts, but the car got so fast so quick that the driver wasn't ready for it. But the data is such a huge help if to find things like that. Let's end that polling, and let's take a look at it pretty quickly, and then we'll go through the last couple of slides. What most people that are here with us today at home after the track event is a big part of what they do. That's 80%. The next biggest one is at 68% at the end of the track day. They take a look at it every day. The first one there was at home after the track event, so maybe it was a 2-day event, or when they get back to the shop or home. And then of course after each session was 64%. So great, and maybe some of you are doing all three of those, right? They probably download then, and they look for those quick things that Tom started with, which was, hey, just let's look at the fuel pressure, the water temperature, the battery voltage, make sure we're going to make it through the next few sessions. And then of course they'll look at the end of the day, or back at the shop. So I appreciate all of the votes on the polls. Thank you very much. And I know Tom was getting a kick out of looking at some of those as well. This webinar, just like all the rest of them, will be up on our YouTube site in just an hour or two. We have 102 videos up there. This one will be number 103. So there's just a ton of information, not just the webinars like this, but how to do GPS lap insert, and how to get the GPS map to be alongside, how to build track maps with the segments like Tom showed today. All of those things, there's tons of videos out there. Make sure you go visit some of those and take a look. The customer support, we're a customer support company that happens to sell racing electronics. And I know that's how Tom thinks of it as well, and many
Absolutely.
of our other dealers. The customer support is really the top of the list, and how can we help you, right? So Tom is at racetracks virtually every weekend, and so is those of us at AIM, and we travel a ton as well as these webinars. If you can't get a hold of us, you're going to have Tom's email address here in just a moment, or give us a call at 800-718-9090. We're here to help. That's what we're here for. So make sure you give us a holler. Customer support is a big part of what we do. So the next webinar, always an important part of what we do here, is towards the end of these presentations. We talk about what's next. And our next webinar, which is Tuesday, August 4th, moving into the month of August, is our CAN guru, Robbie Yeoman, is going to be here. He's in the background, been answering questions today, but Robbie's going to come in and give us part 2 of his CAN 101, part 2 of the AIM Sports CAN bus technology. Always a question. People are commenting all the time. We want even more and more information about this, where Robbie is regularly coming in and is going to continue to talk about this. This is his second time doing it. We're going to build on what we talked about before. Maybe Robbie could throw in the CAN webinar that we did, part 1, and people can maybe take a look at that one and build up to this one if you didn't see that one. But really looking forward to this. This is a topic that is just so powerful, and it's a bigger and bigger part of what we do with our electronics and with our systems. So hope you all can join us on the AIM CAN lesson next Tuesday. So the last slide is kind of where we always close this up, is some contact information. You know, it's great that Tom has been here. I've been trying to get Tom to come and work with us on a webinar for quite some time. Hopefully we won't scare him off. Maybe we can talk him into coming in and doing the next level of Dirt Oval, and then the next level above that, and take a look at deeper and deeper. We really appreciate your time, Tom. I know it takes a lot of time to prepare for these things, and you're a busy guy, and I appreciate you coming. There's Tom's contact information. Micron Tom he's gathered that name for many years back. He was everybody was looking for him in the pits, and maybe they didn't know his name at first, but they knew he was the Micron specialist. So Micron Tom is what everybody knows Tom as, at gmail.com to get a hold of Tom, and for any more information that you'd like to do. Robbie has put up that first lesson, that first part of first webinar in CAN 101. So Tom, I'd like to turn the table over to you for a moment if there's anything else in kind of closing that you'd like to add, and again, thank you for taking the time to do this with us.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you guys. You know, I could not do this and could not be where I am today if it wasn't for the people like you, Roger, that keep feeding me what I need to know to support my customers. Robbie, all the rest of those guys, especially the guys out of the East Coast shop, they really support me, teach me what to do, and they take care of my customers. They take care of their customers. This company from Italy over to here is very responsive to what I've asked for. The new MXM is really the perfect logger for what we're doing here. Not only is it better, it turned out to be cheaper, and it really hit a sweet spot with my market. And I look forward to any of you guys contacting to me if you have Dirt Oval questions.
I appreciate it. Again, thank you, Tom. Thanks you to all the AIM guys in the background. We had Emiliano in here from Italy answering questions. Robbie, Cameron, and Robinson have been answering your questions, watching the chat, interacting with you guys, and it's time out of their busy day too. Everybody's busy, especially right now. So I want to publicly thank those guys again. So I appreciate everybody. Look forward to seeing you again this coming Tuesday, and our co-host Robbie. I think it'll be his fourth or fifth co-host with us. Always very interesting and always well received. So looking forward to seeing you guys on Tuesday. Thanks everybody for coming, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you guys.